has said that Russia may use chemical weapons or create a false flag operation to use them. What evidence have you seen showing that? And would the U.S. have a military response if Putin does launch a chemical weapons attack?
I'm not going to speak about the intelligence, but Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemicals.
So that is Joe Biden responding to a question from a reporter about the dominant conversation around Ukraine this week, which is, are chemical weapons going to be used? If so, who? What's going on? Scary secret labs and all that stuff. With the reporter implying there that it's rational to assume that if chemical weapons were to be used by one party, the US would militarily have a reaction, which could be disastrous. In any event, the Kremlin, as of right now, has denied that it's suggesting to prepare a chemical weapons attack. Bear in mind, they also denied that they were preparing to invade Ukraine for a couple of months. So not exactly the most credible government in the world right now, but they went on to blame the Ukraine and the US for a possible future attack. So everyone is blaming everyone. Everything is terrible. We're gonna turn to some updates on what's actually happening. And the overarching theme is really bad for civilians in Ukraine, also shockingly bad for the Russian invading forces. So we've got a historic comparison to make about how bad it is that is absolutely devastating. But before we get into that, Brett, all the stuff about the chemical weapons attacks, is this gonna be like some of the nuclear threats that were very scary for a bit, but then we go back to just the regular horror, of conventional weapons use?
Just as there is a long tail of fallout following a nuclear attack, there is a long tail of fallout following the discussion of chemical weapons. I can't wait for there to be some discussion of maybe it happened, and then 6 months later, they're still saying that it's a false flag operation. In terms of the accusations that Russia might deny any potential attack, this is the part where everybody just kind of accidentally tips their hand. People that say that, that if Russia is the bad guy, they're going to be the ones who friggin' do the chemical attack. And then there's others that say that America's actually the one behind it and it was a false flag operation. I just want to remind you that recently the Russian ambassador denied that they're attacking Ukraine.
At all.
We didn't attack Ukraine at all. Yeah. In a video, he's like, we didn't attack them. That's it.
Did the troops got lost, I suppose.
But it's just that's the Russian thing. That's what everybody loses sight of. That's how they do. And you can say, well, that's how America does. And my response is, in all of these discussions, we must return to the fundamental principle that there was an assurance that Ukraine would not join NATO. And then after that, the Russians invaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember that as Ted Cruz tries to change the subject, as everybody and their mother tries to change the subject away from the fact that everybody on the right side of the aisle and on Fox News was wrong about that.
Yeah.
You have to remain with your eye on the ball, focused on the fact that Russia invaded Ukraine. And that's why Biden is doing all of the things he's doing, announcing that we're no longer trading with Russia with most favored nation status, raising tariffs, crippling the dollar to the point where someone reportedly was just going to a mall and throwing rubles all over the place because the paper money means nothing anymore. That's it.
Yeah, look, there is an ongoing effort on a lot of topics, but we're seeing it here in multiple different areas to change how you think and how you feel about something that is indisputably horrifying. Whether it's the accusations about well, should they have been somehow even clearer about joining NATO or whatever, or the labs now. What you need to understand is whether something is 0% true, 5% true, 80% true, the point is not the thing that's being talked about. It is an attempt to hijack your feelings, because for some groups, the reaction to the war has shocked them and they don't like it because people don't like it. People are opposed to this. They're horrified by what they're seeing. They don't want the war. That is not an okay position for so many Americans and people around the world to have from the point of view of some incredibly dishonest actors. And so they have got to move you from that position. You are centering compassion, empathy, concern, opposition to imperialism, and it's gotta stop. And so they will try to come up with something. But I'm gonna jump way ahead of any of this. I don't know if it's a month or a year before we know everything that there is to know factually about these labs or whatever. Whatever they find in the labs, which seems most likely it's going to be leftover things from the Soviet era that are being destroyed, or let's say they find weapons. They're not gonna find anything that justifies what's happened, okay? And no one who tries to deceive you is going to explicitly say that it justifies the invasion. They're never gonna make that claim because that's bonkers. But there will be the implication, not just in terms of the way they talk about things, but the amount that they talk about some things. The conversation is now gonna shift from, don't pay attention to the hospitals being bombed. Don't pay attention to the attacks on civilians using humanitarian corridors. Don't think about that stuff. There's no room to, there's no time to, because we're talking about these labs and what's Fauci up to and Hunter Biden and all that. Okay, we will try to track and pay attention to every fact as it develops, but we're not going to allow it to deflect from the horror of the moment. Anyway, any other thoughts, Brett, before we move on?
No, that's absolutely it. Just remember, the theme is frequently, normally what happens is the Republicans are really good at simplifying things, but they can't now because they already tried to simplify it down to Putin's not a bad guy.
Yeah,
that's proven wrong. When he invades Ukraine, you can't do that. And when people come back and say, well, America invades other countries, I agree that we shouldn't do that either.
Exactly.
So that is a
right
point you made, not the point. Everyone's trying to make a point, but the point is that Russia invaded Ukraine when they should not have. And if you're trying to find some tiny little rhetorical footing that holds amid this avalanche of the point, we can't let them do that.
Yeah.
We can't fail everyone in the world by saying, well, actually, you know what? It's all a wash now because in one factory, the US and Ukraine were sketchy.
Yeah, and but one final note on this, for anyone who's relatively new to American politics, if you weren't like actively following media during the run up to like the war in Iraq and stuff like that, there is a special irony to people effectively co-opting the two, like the sorts of rationales that were used to defend that. Hey, maybe there are weapons of mass destruction in there, gotta go in there. Ooh, there's radical people, gotta invade. That's what they're saying about Ukraine. There's Nazis, there's chemical weapons, that justifies it. Literally every single person now pushing that implied that the neocons were 100% wrong to use that as a justification to attack Iraq. But suddenly now, perfectly good reasons for an imperial power to invade another country. Isn't that ironic?
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.